Hello everybody and welcome. I am Daniel from Home Portal and today we will be discussing finance and mortgages with one of the leading mortgage brokers on the Costa del Sol, which I will introduce you to, Marc Elliott de Lama from Fluent Finance Abroad. Today we will be discussing the importance of getting organised and having our finance, paperwork and mortgage options available to us. Welcome, Marc, and thank you for having us today.
Hi.
So, why is it important for our buyers to contact and have a conversation with you as early as possible?
If you're considering investing in a Spanish property, obviously it's quite a sizable investment, and we're talking about quite a lot of money at times. And when we're talking about property investment, a lot of the time clients want to find out about mortgages because mortgages go alongside property investing. I think it's really important for clients to understand clearly and very early on in the stage what the finance options are and what particular finance can look like, so they can make an informed decision very early on before they actually start getting emotionally attached to a particular property. If clients do it the other way around, they search for property first, they get emotionally attached, and then they start trying to find out about the finance element, that's when complications start to arise, because the Spanish mortgage market is very different to what they may be accustomed to back in their own country.
Because a lot of the clients that I'm speaking to at the present moment in time, they ask me whether it's better to get the mortgage in their home country or to get the mortgage in Spain. What would your answer be to that?
And we would never tell someone what to do with their own money, but I would always research the possibilities of getting a mortgage in Spain. The main reason for this is that Spanish property is a very illiquid asset. Spanish banks are not comfortable with refinancing or raising capital against unencumbered properties. So if you do buy cash and you realize later on that you've made a bit of a mistake and you want to release some money later on, that's very hard to do, especially as a non-Spanish resident. It's hard to do as a Spanish resident, let alone as a non-Spanish resident. So what I would always advise is for everyone to at least explore what the mortgage options are, so that you're informed as to what's available. And so that you make the decision knowing full well that you're not going to be able to release funds later on. And the only way to release the liquidity would be to sell. Now, as you're a real estate agent, you don't mind that because they'll call you and you get a chance to sell the property. But for a lot of people, it's not what they intended. They intended to hold the property a long time, but they suffer liquidity issues. If you get a mortgage early doors, at the beginning when you buy, you don't have that issue.
You are right. I would prefer them just to keep their property and not have to worry about problems later on down the line. But as we both know, that's life. And
yeah. It happens a lot. We get a lot of inquiries every week with people with cash tied up in Spanish property looking to release it, and unfortunately they're not able to. Right. And so getting a mortgage, or at least finding out, will avoid that scenario later on.
One of the biggest questions people ask me is, what are the complications, and especially with agents that work for us, what are the biggest complications if a client says they're a cash buyer and then at the last minute they say they want a mortgage?
The biggest complication is Spanish banks aren't renowned for being exactly speedy. There's a lot of reasons for this, but everything that the Spanish banks consider has to comply with Spanish mortgage regulations, and those are set down by the Bank of Spain and the Spanish government. And this is really important nowadays because it seems like the Bank of Spain are being a bit more stringent with regards to the banks. And every positive lending decision that a bank makes gets reported to the Bank of Spain. And so therefore, what we're seeing now, a lot of the time, a few years ago it wasn't as strict, but banks are taking a much longer time to come to a positive decision that we need. The problem is that puts pressure on the sale. If you've fallen in love with a property and the vendor wants you to move quickly, the issue for buyers, for real estate agents, for lawyers, for mortgage brokers, is that the bank won't care and they will take their time before making a decision. And that could put pressure on the sale going through. And that's not what we want.
Get the mortgage pre-approved early.
Yes.
Because you don't want your client to put down 10%, 30%, and then at the last minute, they can't then get the mortgage, then they've lost that money.
Correct, yeah.
And one thing that we both agree on is the protection of our clients is very, very important. So we don't want them to lose one single cent.
No, of course not, because if you burn one customer, the word there is that they're burnt. You know, they've lost the money. It was a failed investment, and so they will go away and not buy. So, and that's because it wasn't prepared. The client wasn't prepared properly. And I'm a big believer in preparing properly. If you want to, you know, make sure you know what you're doing before you put money on the table. Can I give you an example? Yesterday I was speaking to a client, a very good client, but the client was insisting that he needed an amazing mortgage offer ready, all bells and whistles and done within 3 weeks. And we hadn't even started the process yet. And I was trying to explain to him, if you really want one of the high street banks, well, I'm talking about Santander, Sabadell, Bankinter, La Caixa, these banks, high street banks that offer the best rates, you have to understand that they're going to need time in order to come up with a positive lending decision. And it's not going to happen within 3 weeks. It could happen, but more often than not, it won't. If you want a rubbish deal, but with a bank that's very quick, okay, that's fine. But you need to understand, so the earlier you prepare your mortgage application, to the point where you don't even need to have the property ready, you can get your mortgage ready and then start looking at your budget. The mortgage is there, the money is there, and then the whole process goes through nice and smoothly. You don't have to worry about the mortgage, it's already there, you know what the terms and conditions are, and then you rely on the brokers to then get it over the line with your agent, with your lawyer. And it's a much more pleasant experience rather than rushing around, getting stressed, and then running the risk of, A, the mortgage broker won't take you on, because the mortgage broker needs time to do the job. Mortgage broker doesn't like working under unnecessary pressure. And run the risk of the actual deal falling apart because you haven't had enough time to organise yourself properly.
Which is one of the main things that I do not want for any of my buyers.
Well, it's a mess. It's a mess and it's a complete waste of time, in my opinion.
And so unprofessional.
Yeah, it's avoidable. That's the thing, it's avoidable. If we have a conversation early about money, how to use the money early on, then the client can, you know, make a decision with their eyes wide open. And then there's no complaints. There's nothing else to say that no one did that. We did our job properly. We advised you correctly.
Yeah. And in this process, obviously we know it's not an easy process. We know it's not a quick process. So to get prepared, to get offers coming in from the good offers that we want, how long would you say the process would take?
Ideally, we would love to be able to discuss the application with the client, find out about the clients, find out about their income, where the income's coming from, the source of deposit and the costs, make sure that that's money is available, make sure they understand the taxes that need to be paid, understand the profile. Once we've understood the profile and we think, yeah, this is a good profile for a high street Spanish bank.
Yeah.
Then ideally we would need, for the application, we need to build the application. From submission, ideally it would be nice to have at least 1 month to get as many offers as we can. Some banks are quicker than others, remember. And we honestly believe that to get the best deal, the really best deal, it is worth waiting for some of the slower banks to come through. If you give us 2 weeks, then you're going to be disappointed. That's a conversation I'm quite prepared to have on camera, and this conversation that I have many times with clients. You will be disappointed, and we're not in the business of disappointing people. And so we want to make sure that we have clear boundaries and we have clear idea as to what is possible.
That goes back to our conversation of why it is so important for all buyers to speak to you firsthand, as in early stages of the process, to have an understanding. Whether they take the mortgage or not, that's their choice, but so they have the understanding as early as possible.
Yeah, because we're advisors, and our job is to ensure that we advise people in the correct manner so they can make the right decision. The worst thing is for us or for me personally, is to have 4 or 5 inquiries a week of someone who's saying, I bought my property cash and now I need to raise the mortgage because I was told it was easy to do. That for me is more of a waste of time. I'd rather invest my time, I say educating, but making sure the clients have the information to make the right decision so they don't have to call me later on for something I can't help them with.
A very good question that a lot of my agents ask me, and a lot of our buyers ask our agents when we're having that first phone call, is interest rates.
Yeah.
Interest rates in Spain compared to other countries.
Yeah, so Spanish banks are incredibly competitive between each other. And what we see is that, rates in Spain for high street lending, I'm always going to the high street because that's where we always focus on. That's where everyone wants to go. Compared to other parts of Europe, Spain is the cheapest. And if we're looking at UK, for example, rates in Spain are much lower than they are in the UK, especially on buy-to-let or investment properties. And if we're even looking at the US, we're even cheaper still. The rates in the UK are cheaper than in the US. So rates in Spain are very attractive. I mean, we're looking at Poland. Rates are much cheaper in Spain than they are in Poland. So getting a Spanish mortgage makes a lot of financial sense because compared to other parts of the world, it is cheap money. So when we had that conversation, when we explained that you could borrow some money, leverage you, so you don't have to use all your cash and tie it up in a Spanish property, but the rates can be between 2.7 up to 4.5. Again, a lot of people will think, well, that's great, but they've got to also understand that it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like taking candy from a baby. You have to work at getting the right mortgage.
One of the things that frustrates me the most, and I know me and you have had this conversation many times, is, yes, you just mentioned there, you could, in theory, get interest rates of 2.7, but that's not guaranteed.
No.
So when people read this on the internet and then we have the conversations with them, it's very hard for us to try and overcome this question. Because obviously it depends on a lot of variables. What they own in their home country, what their job is, etc., correct?
What the banks look for, because of Bank of Spain rules and regulations, the first thing is do you have enough income to service this mortgage and everything else that you've got?
Yep.
So the first question, doesn't matter if it's banking to Santander, Sabadell, whatever, the first thing they will focus on, and what we focus on, is what levels of income do you have and how consistent are these income levels over the last three years?
Okay.
That's the first thing that a lot of people think they have a lot of really good income in their own country, that's fine, but they may have a lot of debt attached. So they may have a big mortgage, they may have a couple of rental properties, they may have a big car loan. All these things, a Spanish bank, doesn't matter which one it is, will focus on, because the Bank of Spain insists that they focus on. All right, so it's affordability. Everything is affordability, and every person is different. And so therefore, again, it's really important, I believe, that they speak to someone in authority. And I think after being in the business for 20 years, doing it every day for 20 years, I do believe we have some kind of idea as to what Spanish banks look for. And bearing in mind, we have developed and nurtured relationships with these banks for 20 years. It's not something we've just woken up and decided to become an expert at. So we have 20 years worth of track record. We have 20 years of relationships. It's good that they can download to us and then we can have an honest conversation without having to sell you anything, because essentially we're not one bank. I'm not going to try and sell you what I've got. I'm going to try and advise you to the network of lenders that we have available to make sure that what you're expecting is actually is realistic.
But then it goes back to the sooner that a buyer has a conversation with you, sooner as a buyer gives you the information, the better options that they will have.
For sure. Please remember, we are a business and we want to help people invest in Spain. We're not here just to say no, because we wouldn't be in business for that long. But we need time to understand the process, and then we need to give the banks time in order to make the right decision. You know, we get a lot of fantastic clients, really interesting clients with all sorts of different histories and businesses and everything else like that. But remember, we do have to make it fit into the high street, and they have very, very strict lending criteria. And that is not something that you can just do like that. Even though it should be easy and everything else like that, to always remember, Bank of Spain is keeping an eye on everything. And if it doesn't tick all the boxes, it's going to get a no.
So then that leads to my next question is, are the banks comfortable lending to foreign buyers on the Costa del Sol?
100%. They are. And we've got a great track record of doing so. The Spanish banks are very open to foreigners investing in Spanish property and using their money to do so. But again, we have to understand that it's not just a free-for-all. We did that before the credit crisis, and it didn't end up very well. And this is why these regulations are here, to keep an eye on the banks to make sure that they're lending responsibly. If your profile, and I'm going to be, I'm just going to tell it as, I'm just going to be straight. Back before the credit crisis, Spanish banks were giving money to people who truly and honestly and truly could not afford to own a property in Spain. And the problem with that is, okay, well, the bank suffers. Yeah, no, that's fine. The bank suffers, but the communities that they invest in, they don't get their community fees. All right. So we're still suffering this now. People haven't paid the communities for 15 years. That doesn't help. The community doesn't help it. And the local taxes don't get paid. So, it's quite an important thing that Spanish banks lend money to people who can afford to pay it back. Yeah, who can actually afford to buy a beautiful property here in the south of Spain. And so yes, they are, but they're looking for certain profiles. And our job is to try and help with that process and understand what profiles they're looking for, and try and show a client, if you go in like this, you're going to fail. But if you did this, then you've got more chance of being successful, if that's what you really want to do. So yeah. But they are very open.
Which is great for my buyers. It's great for you because they're willing to work. But there's certain paperwork that obviously we need.
Yeah.
Okay. So how do you see the international market at the present moment in time?
I see it really positive. We're getting a lot of interest. A lot of stuff is happening in the world. The world has changed a lot. We've had Brexit, we've had the pandemic, we've had war in Ukraine. Now we have something, some war going on in the Middle East. Spain is a very attractive country because of the infrastructure, the weather, the culture, the food, the lifestyle, and we're seeing a big influx of international buyers looking to invest in Spanish property for many, many reasons, for holidays, but a lot of the people now are seeing Spain as somewhere really safe and secure and nice to live. And a lot of people are moving their families here. You know, I've got a family in our development. They've you know, they're buying here because they were based in Qatar, and quite frankly, they got 2 young kids, the same age as my two young kids. I totally understand why they don't want to be there right now, and they've moved to Spain.
Yeah.
Why? Because they want to bring up their kids in a safe environment. I mean, it's not rocket science, and we have beautiful weather.
Both me and you have young families. Both me and you agree this is a fantastic place to bring up a family.
Yeah.
Weather, outdoor. Our buyers at the present moment in time are younger families looking to relocate to the Costa del Sol simply because they see it as a fantastic place to bring up kids.
It is.
What other sort of clients and buyers would you say that you're dealing with majority at the moment?
Okay, so we do get a lot of mature clients that are here just to retire into Spain. It's difficult to get mortgages for those because obviously we have age restrictions in Spain where you know, and this is particularly pertinent for people from the US because in the US there are no real age restrictions. It's but in Spain there is. So therefore, people in the US who are maybe 65, 70 will be accustomed to be able to get a mortgage. They would struggle to get one here. So that's really important that the people from the US are aware of this. So yeah, our customers generally are from the age of 35 up to the age of 65 and 70. So there are various reasons. But just to touch on what you've said about raising a family here, it's a safe environment, but it's very outdoors. And you and I, we love sport, football, tennis, and to bring your children up knowing that they can just go to the tennis club or the football pitch and they don't have to worry about the weather. But another thing is here, they have the opportunity of growing up bilingual, which is a gift that you can give your child. So there's so many positives. There's too many positives they outweigh. The only negative is that they're not building enough houses, in my opinion. And so there is limited stock. And so that tells me that the property market isn't going to crash. But I mean, you know, we don't know what's around the corner.
Listen, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what's going to happen in 10 years' time. That's the one thing in life that we can never guarantee. But the one thing that both of us can offer and can say with a lot of people looking to relocate, especially with what's going on worldwide, is the fact that if you are a younger family, to be able to go to a golf course, go to all the local free football pitches, tennis clubs, paddle clubs, is incredible. Especially the fact that the kids, know whether they're 1-year-old, 10-year-old, 15 years old, they're always welcome as well.
It's a privilege to live here.
Yeah.
You know, it's a privilege to be able to offer that to your children, and they grow up, and that's all they know. They're quite lucky, and if we can give that to the kids, then well, you know, it's a fantastic thing to be able to do.
So, with all these different profiles that we are both dealing with, has the underwriting become stricter?
Yeah, it has. The reason being is because they're on the hook now to the Bank of Spain on everything. So any mortgage that they sign has to get reported to the Bank of Spain. The Bank of Spain monitor. Okay. Now, if one particular bank is having a lot of defaults or you know, okay, the Bank of Spain will start asking questions, and the Bank of Spain will probably come in and audit to see why they're having so many defaults. And that's what the banks don't want. They don't want to pick a fight with the Bank of Spain. That's why they're being so cautious, and that's why they're taking extra time. in coming to a positive lending decision. So yes, they are being more strict, but that makes it more important to get properly advised beginning.
At the beginning, yeah. Okay. What are the loan to value rates?
Yeah. Okay, so levels of loan to value for non-residents, because your clients are mainly non-residents, right?
Correct.
I'll ask you a couple of questions about your own clients as well. So if you're from the EU countries like France, Germany, established countries with good economies, you know, it's quite normal to expect a mortgage up to 70%. That's the maximum. The best rates really are, so a lot of people are more interested in getting the lower rate because they see themselves having a mortgage for, you know, at least 5-10 years. And so therefore having a really good rate is quite interesting. The best kind of rates, if you're looking to go to the high street, which everyone is, you should be focusing on maybe accepting a slightly lower loan to value at around 60%. If your profile is amazing, you're exactly what the Spanish banks want to see, then you can get a really good rate at 70. But it's important that you have some extra cash just in case, if you are really, really focused on rate. If you're not that bothered about rate, then 70 is quite achievable, and sometimes even 75% if you're not that bothered about rate. If you are really interested in rate, then be prepared to put a little bit more extra cash in. So, you know, between 30 and 40% for the deposit, and then the 10-11% on top for the closing costs for a resale. A little bit more if it's for off plan.
Yeah, looking at 13.5 if it's off plan.
If you're a Spanish resident and you pay tax in Spain and you have roots here and you can show that you've been living in Spain for a long time and been paying tax in Spain for at least 3 years, you can get 80%. You can, if your profile is extremely good, can get up to 90. And if you're under 35, you can try and get 100%.
Yes.
That's new.
Which is, it goes to a conversation me and you had a few weeks ago, where there was the old phishing adverts going out of people under 35 being able to get obviously a 90% mortgage, which going out to foreign buyers is never ever going to happen.
Well, it's impossible because they're not Spanish residents.
So you have to, realistically, if you want a 90% mortgage, you have to be a Spanish resident for
at least, to get 93 years at least. I mean, those types of mortgages are designed for Spaniards that were born here. Not for a Swedish guy that just arrived and got his NIE.
Now, when I speak to my buyers and when the agents speak to our buyers, we always say to our buyers, unless you speak to a mortgage advisor to see what offer they can get you, worst case scenario, you need 50% cash and the other 50% we could cover with a mortgage.
Those figures are prudent, they're conservative, and that's safe. Now, once the mortgage advisor gets into the nitty-gritty with you, then the mortgage advisor will say, well, actually, I think we could probably get you a bit more than that. But if you're trying to ground people with some basic information, I think that's a very good level to start the conversation off.
I prefer to start that conversation off with the 50-50 because there's questions that I can ask. But then realistically, the conversation regarding more personal questions realistically should come from the professionals who deal with mortgages like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, essentially we need to have a conversation with every single person, and every single person is going to be different. Their circumstances is going to be different. The way they earn their money is going to be different. The debts that they have are going to be different. But that conversation needs to be had. Otherwise, there is no direction. You can't advise anyone without having the full facts in front of you. And there's no point guessing because there's too much money on the table. It's too important.
Do you see any challenges for international buyers?
The challenges I see is that it's not getting any easier. It's not getting any quicker. That we need more competition within the mortgage industry and from lenders, in my opinion. The lenders that we have, they're quite comfortable. They're earning lots of money. They're breaking records in profits. So they don't have to take any extra risks or find any ways to be more flexible. So we'd love to see more competition. And I just think it's going to be a little bit harder to get your mortgage ready in a way that is more accommodating in terms of quickness. I think people need to be prepared to really do some groundwork with a qualified mortgage broker before. Otherwise, they're just going to have to end up buying cash because the Spanish banks won't be ready in time.
Okay. Is there any nationality in particular that has to do more paperwork than others?
Yeah. Everyone has to do a lot of paperwork because the banks need to know who you are, how you earn your money. So that's a given. But countries that aren't as prominent as, say, British or as, say, French. So Spanish banks are quite comfortable with dealing with paperwork in French, for example, in German, in English. When it comes down to Polish, Lithuanian, Latvian, or Chinese, then that paperwork needs to be, many times need to be translated. So that's another layer of complexity because you do need to employ a sworn translator to use it.
Yeah.
And obviously I don't speak Chinese, I don't speak Latvian, so there's no point sending me a load of, I can put it into AI, then we got AI and it will help. But unfortunately, the AI won't be sufficient for the banks. So we need to try and make the bank's life as easy as we possibly can because that speeds up the process. If you make the bank's life difficult because you're not sending the right documents in the right way, then your application will be ignored. All right? And that's not good because it's not going anywhere. Right? And that just adds to the stress and the uncertainty and everything else like that. That's why, again, using a broker who can guide you, say, look, you need to send this information specifically, will speed up the process.
But then what you just said there is the same for like a nervous buyer. So what would your advice for a nervous buyer be?
I would definitely say that take action and pick experts that you trust. You have to trust them, and you have to listen to them. Let them be responsible for you. Now, when we take a client on, before we take a client on, the problem is the client's, not ours. Okay? If we decide to take a client on, the client then transfers that problem and that responsibility from them to us.
To you.
So we now have a problem. And that problem is we need to get them the mortgage that they really, really need in order to buy that house.
Yep.
And we're quite happy to accept that responsibility, and that's what we get paid for. So anyone who's nervous, then I would always say pay someone to be responsible for you, and search for a company or people who've been there many years and done it hundreds and thousands of times because they've got the experience to do it.
So I've got a buyer.
Yeah.
Why is it so important for that buyer who could have a little bit of nervousness because they're buying for the first time in a foreign country? They don't know the rules and regulations. So why is it important for a buyer to work with a reputable international real estate company?
I think it's fundamental. You need to feel, you've got to have trust that because essentially you don't have the experience that they have. Hopefully that real estate agent will employ the experience that they've got to do the right thing by you, It's a feeling, I think, and you've got to do your research, and you've got to have a good connection with that person. You've got to like that person, but you also, really more importantly, you've got to trust that person that they're going to do right by you. And that's not an easy decision to make.
But what I'm finding is that a lot of these buyers won't have a conversation with myself or an agent because of obviously the tools and the materials that they have at their disposal. My question here then is, why is it important for a buyer to have a good conversation with a real estate agent on the Costa del Sol so they can explain to this agent or that company what they are looking for?
Because you can't do your job properly without knowing more about their needs, their wants, their timescales. Why are they buying this? Is it, a pure investment? Are you, do you have family behind you that are going to use this? There's so many things that you need to find out in order to do your job properly. I think as agents, you need to insist more in how to have that conversation. There's a lot going on, and it's not a small purchase. It's a big purchase. Buying a house in Spain is not something you do every day.
It's a dream.
Yeah.
And why I'm here, why you're here, is to help that dream come true.
Yeah.
So that's why we work together, have done for many years, and we'll carry on.
I think it's really important, Dan, that we're doing this video, and we're going to get it out to the people in your sphere, and just to offer ourselves, we're here. We're here. We've been there. We've got plenty of experience. We've got plenty of knowledge. We've guided thousands of people in the past. And please reach out and get some information. And then if buying in Spain isn't for you, fine. That's no problem.
That's one of the whole reasons why we are doing this video, is because to give buyers a little bit of information, but also to have an understanding that what you guys do, what Fluent Finance Abroad do as a company.
Yeah, and ultimately here we're here to encourage foreign investors into Spanish property to do so, number one, but to do so in a quality way, a way in which it makes financial sense, and so that they don't find that after the investment they have problems. And that's what we're here for. We're not here to sell you houses. We're not here to give you legal advice, tax advice. We're here to talk to you about the money side of it, and guide you and coach you if you want, to do it in a way that is going to make financial sense long term. Anyone can buy. If you've got enough cash, you can buy a house in Spain. But is that the right thing to do? If your cash is limited. Not everyone has bags of cash. In fact, very few people have millions and millions and millions of euros that can go and buy whatever they want. So if your cash is limited, or if you need, so for example, you might have a cash budget of 500,000. You end up buying something for that 500,000, but in an area that you don't like. Now, if you would have got a mortgage of 200. Or 250,000, that may have got you an area that you are happy. That you would like. So you've invested 500,000, you paid all the taxes on it. You realise now you've made a mistake. Now you have to sell that, which includes taxes and sales, and then go and buy the house that you rent. Or will you actually go and buy that house that you want, or will you just take your money back to your country, where you're from, and regret doing it? So what I'm saying, talking about the money side of it, early doors, is so important.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
Tell me a little bit more about your clients, where they're from, and what type of properties they're after.
Well, first of all, Home Portal is a Czech company, a very successful company in Prague. Okay, so the main clients that we deal with are from Czechoslovakia and Slovakia. Okay, because obviously being close to each other, so we have a lot of clients coming from there. We also focus on the UK market because obviously we know that the UK market has always been strong and would always carry on being strong. And then we look into other markets such as the Swedish market, the Dutch market, the German market, and the American market. One thing I don't do as a company and as a real estate company is I won't advertise in countries that I don't have someone who speaks that language. Because like you said earlier, if you can't understand that language or you can't read what they're sending you, we can't do our job properly. So that's one thing I do. Present moment in time, I have a real big mix of what people are looking for. Okay, I've got clients that want to just buy a 1-bedroom apartment and use it as a quick lock up and leave and get out of whatever country they're in. I've got a lot of clients that are young families that are looking to relocate, so they want like a 3 or a 4-bedroom apartment. If they've got the budget, then they want a townhouse or a villa. Obviously, as a family, you'd rather have a larger property than a smaller property, but it depends on budget. And then we do have quite a few investors as well who are literally looking to buy to rent the properties out. Whether that's short term or long term, that's their decision.
Sure.
But yeah, that's the sort of clients that we have.
Can I explain a little bit more? So you mentioned Czech Republic and Slovakia. From a mortgage perspective and a banking perspective. So talking to those clients, because the currency that they're earning in,
correct,
lending to those nationalities is more complex than lending to someone from France or from Holland, because of the strength of the currency. They're not in the Eurozone. So this is really important. So the mortgage application, in my opinion, should be started even sooner, well before they come to Spain. And we need to see if they're able to get a mortgage in their personal name, or if they might need to set up a company structure in order for the mortgage to be granted via the Spanish entity.
Okay.
This again comes down to Spanish mortgage law and being compliant with Spanish mortgage law. It's actually European, and earning in a currency that isn't euro, and which isn't one of the core currencies like dollar, Swiss franc, pound sterling. It makes the Spanish bank's life a little bit more difficult. So if you're Slovakian clients or Czech Republic clients need a mortgage, they really do need to start having a conversation very
early.
Unless,
One thing I do know is that already you have helped a lot of our clients from those countries, and it's always been positive. Okay, so the feedback that I've had from my Czech clients and my Slovakian clients is incredible. The first thing you have explained to them is because of the currencies, then it is going to be a little bit more prolonged. But it has been incredible. So
thank you. Again, what we try and do is make sure that client has the information early on so they can make an informed decision. So if they do need to set up a company, then it's really important that they speak to an accountant or a lawyer to understand the pros and cons of doing that, how much it costs to set up. Is it in there? Does it make sense for them to do that? It's right. It's better for them to have that conversation when they're sitting in Prague rather than sitting in Marbella in a beautiful apartment and then realize, oh no, I've got to set up a company in order to get the mortgage on this. That's, again, we can avoid all this if the client engage and get the right information before they decide to come and look in.
Perfect.
That's what we aim to do. And if with, collaborating with you and your company, Home Portal, it's worked in the past. Let's hope it works in the future, and hopefully this video will go a long way in getting the clients to think about, okay, this is quite serious. Let's do some extra research before we come over.
Totally. Finally, then, I really appreciate your time today. Thank you. Your final advice for any foreign buyer?
My advice is to do what I did. When I bought my house, my wife and she left me to worry about the money side of it. That's what I do for a living. And so I didn't get my wife too excited until I knew exactly what the money side was going to look like. And as soon as I knew what the money side was going to look like, I said to my wife, we're ready. Here's the budget. And my wife was she did her part. Her part was finding the perfect property for us and our family. So I did the research on the money side, got that organized. My wife did the fun part, I guess, is to then go house hunting. That's what I would always do. Okay. Get the money side of it understood, know what is possible, and then make a decision.
So we both agree the most important thing is to speak to you as early as possible to have our funds ready. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Daniel.
Cheers, mate.